exciting edition of the Youth Care Talk Show brought to you by Corporals in partnership with CBC. I'm your host, Olivia Tutu, and of course, I'm not alone in the studios. I'm with my co-host,
Albert Chinyente.
Hi, Albert.
Hi, Olivia.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm good.
For the first time, I'm doing all right. You shocked?
I was gonna say that for the first time, if you've been following our show, then you definitely know that half the time, Albert is somewhat not okay. What's making you happy today?
Money.
Oh, nice.
Do you have money?
I don't. Would you like to share?
No, thank you. Let's proceed.
Okay, moving on. Today, I genuinely love today's topic, first of all.
It's a sad topic.
Say that? It's a sad topic, but I feel like the fact that we're going to speak about it would sort of help people understand and do better.
Exactly.
So it's a good thing. So we are talking about STIs in adolescents and the young people. STIs, which are sexually transmitted infections. And what do you know about STIs, Albert?
They're sexually transmitted, and there are many types. Let me give you an example of syphilis, there's gonorrhea, there's chlamydia, there's HIV.
Look at that. For some reason, people don't think HIV is an STI.
Why is that?
I don't know, because I think it's like one of those STIs that's like more proclaimed because it's like everywhere and we hear lots of statistics and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, and there's a saying which says, which people say that, let me say that, HIV is not curable, but STIs are curable. Let me give an example of syphilis. When you can get it, but you can get cured. But as in for HIV, it's not. So I think our guests will need to explain on that one.
Nice. Of course, remember, my health, my responsibility, your health, your responsibility. This show is brought to you to help you take care of your health and all things sexual reproductive health, because we want you to be happy, we want you to be wealthy, and we want you to be healthy as well. Now, Albert and I are no experts.
Exactly.
We don't know much about STIs, and so we're going to have our guest in the studio that's going to help us speak more about STIs. What are they? How do they develop? How can they be transmitted? And all things STIs, so that you can stay a healthy life after the show.
Exactly. So don't go nowhere. Welcome back. In just you're watching the Youth Care Talk Show brought to you by Corporals in partnership with CBC. As Ella mentioned, we talked of bringing up a guest who's going to help us understand what STIs are, how STIs are transmitted, and what signs can we know that a person has got STIs. With me in the studios is Mr. KB. Mr. KB, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm alright. I'm trying to double money. I'm alright.
Oh, wonderful. Good to hear. I know at the end of the show we shall share.
We'll talk about that later. Alright, so Mr. KB, I want an opportunity for you to introduce yourself, where you're coming from, and what you do, so that our viewers can actually know who's in the studios.
Okay, my name is KB Mlongo. I come from Chilanga. I'm one of those people who are running programs at Chilanga District Health Office.
Alright.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Department of Clinical Care.
Clinical care?
Yeah.
Alright, so we'll just dive into our conversation. Today we're speaking of STIs. What are STIs, sexually transmitted infections?
Okay, so I'm actually happy the way you introduced the topic.
Alright.
You said everything, so I'll just emphasize a few things. So STIs sometimes are known as STDs. Yeah. So STI means sexually transmitted infections. STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. So this means that these infections or diseases are transmitted when there is sexual intimacy between two people. Okay? If someone has this disease or this infection and they have that intercourse, then there's that they can share the diseases. Yeah.
All right, so can you give us some examples of STIs or STDs?
Okay, you actually said most of them. So now, STDs or STIs are caused by different type of germs. So we have bacteria, we have viruses, parasites, and so on and so forth. So when you talk of bacteria, this is where you have kinds like syphilis, you have chlamydia, okay?
Yeah.
And then the viruses, you have HIV, which is human immunodeficiency virus. And then the other one is HPV, okay? Human papilloma virus. So these are some of them.
All right, so just to pick on what you've said, we've talked of bacteria. Who is the main carrier between females and males when it comes to STIs?
No, it's equal.
It's equal.
Yeah.
So there's no that
They
ratio,
don't
let's say,
favor.
that men carry more.
No, they don't favor.
They don't favor. There have been misconceptions about this. I've heard one saying, my fellow young people saying that men transmit more than females. How is that true? Is that true? True or false?
Wow. So when you talk of transmission risk, you'll find that a female are more at risk because of their biological makeup. Yeah. So that's the only difference. Otherwise, in terms of carriers, all of them can carry equally.
All right, so you can agree with me that in the recent past, we've seen high numbers of HIV infections. What do you think are some of the factors leading to that?
Okay, so when you talk of HIV infection among young people, you have a lot of issues there.
Yeah.
So the most which is there is information. And when we talk of information, we are talking about early sexual information. Unfortunately, parents all the time think their children are still young to know about sex. But you'll find that by the time they will realize to say, can we maybe introduce this person to talk about sex, they are too late. These people have already started
having sex.
Yes. So information is number one, actually, which leads to that. Then number two, this is the time when young people are transitioning biologically, physiologically.
Yeah.
They are coming from this body which is young, which has no feelings, the hormones are low, and then they are growing up. So it's difficult now for them to know how to behave, to know how to control themselves, So at that time, they tend to do things which, for lack of a better term, bad manners, Yeah. So all these are leading to high increase of sexually transmitted infections, including HIV.
All right, so we spoke of information, but I feel as of right now, information is there. People know that they need to abstain, or maybe they need to use a condom. Information has always been there. Let me give you an example of youth-friendly spaces and then communities. These guys are tasked at educating young people how to protect themselves from STIs and everything, self-care, everything inclusive.
Yeah.
Information has always been there. Do you still think right now information is still a barrier?
It is a barrier.
In what sense?
Unfortunately, abstinence at the moment seems to be out of fashion. When you talk about abstinence, they think, no, it's you who lived in those days,
Past.
yeah, who should abstain. Otherwise, abstinence is the best because there's no risk there. You are just alone, So young people all the time tend to think you are not a computer age. You can't tell me about abstinence. In your days, it used to work, but this time it's not. So information alone is not good enough. The people might have information, but they are not using the information. So it's still a barrier. So we should find ways on how we can use this information so that at least it's going to help us. And then when you talk of youth-friendly corners, most of the facilities have these youth-friendly corners, and they have programs, but then you find that for some reason, young people find it boring sometimes. They will come, for example, at the beginning of the year, when you are promoting these activities, you have 50 of them. But by the time you reach mid-year, you find that the number is almost half. Most of them have stopped coming. So youth-friendly corners should find a different approach now to try and bring in a lot of activities which can make things interesting all the time. I can give an example where they don't just talk about sexual reproductive health. You can include activities like maybe home economics, where everyone, by the way, even men can bake, can make cakes. So everyone, that day, they don't even talk about what is HIV. They just concentrate on how do you bake? How do you make that? Is it a 14-stand cake, which can give you a lot of money?
All right, so what you're trying to say is that there's a need of an integration in how activities are being run, because most of these spaces, they just offer information. Like, to a young person, let me say on a Monday, I go there, they teach me on a Tuesday, I go there again, it gets boring. So what they're trying to suggest is that they should incorporate some other activities that will glue young people.
Yes. So they can even make things like, they can do gardening, you know, so that when they come for those activities, they do some learning, they go and water their vegetables. Tomorrow they will sell. They will have something. They will even have transport for coming for those programs, you know. They can have board games, you know, competing with team A, team B. They compete, they put two mamanes together, the winner takes it all. So such things I think can boost these youth-friendly corners.
All right, and I want to tap in on what you said on parents. We live in Zambia. Zambia is very cultural. We've got our own cultures and everything. I think there's this norm which talks about parents should not talk to their children about sex. I think it's one of the leading causes that hinders parents on having a conversation with their child. How do we best deal with that one?
Okay, so to start with, parents always think I'm a parent and my child is still young. Okay? I'll give you an example. The first time the lady talks about marriage in a home, there's that resistance from the father, from the mother. They think, no, you can't. You are still young. Meanwhile, this person has already reached that age where they can get married. So parents will always think that way. So to avoid such, I think we can use other avenues like schools, for example. If we can introduce a better curriculum which can talk about these issues, okay? It shouldn't be all the time it's mathematics and whatever. So we can factor in, there should be time when young people should just talk about these issues in class together with the teacher. Remember, teachers are more like second parents, okay? So if children can learn from there, I think things can change.
Things can change?
Yeah.
All right, so I want you to highlight some of the consequences or dangers that associate themselves with STIs. What will happen if a young person who's my age or probably younger than me gets an STI? The negative impacts.
Okay. So, you know, just the sex itself, the sex debut matters. That first experience you have, if the experience you have a bad experience to start with, you will live with it. Even in marriage, you always think, oh, this is what happened when I just started, and you know. Yeah. So that mental stress, you keep it throughout your life from that experience. Then the other is some of the STIs can complicate into mental issues, you know. If, for example, you get syphilis, it's not treated, you become a mental patient at some point, you know. Some of the STIs are caused by germs which can destroy the eyes, so someone can become blind, okay. Some of the STIs can destroy the passages which help in reproduction, for example. So you find that someone can become infertile. You know, they won't have children in future. So all these are things which can result from STIs.
All right, so what are some of the most common STIs in young persons?
Okay, so the commonest, we have HIV, as we have said. Then we have syphilis, these are common, chlamydia, they are common, herpes simplex. Of late, we used to separate, there is type 1, type 2, but this time, because of, you know, when people are having sex, they have different forms of sex. Some of them will have oral sex, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that difference now is no longer there. So these are some of the commonest. And then we can also talk about the HPV, which I talked about, which eventually results to cervical cancer in women.
All right, so
Very common.
me and my co-hosts were having a conversation on STIs. Is HIV an STI?
Yes, it is. It's sexually transmitted.
But the thing is that there's this saying that STIs are curable, then there is HIV, which has no cure.
Okay, so when you look at viruses, actually, viruses have been giving us a lot of trouble from the time we knew them. Look, now we have this corona.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you talk of viruses, talk about cure, not really. Yeah.
All right, so how possible is it for a person to know that they could actually an STI? Are there symptoms? Let me say, we'll start with HIV. You talked of HIV being the most common. What are the symptoms that show that a person has got HIV that they may be able to point out and go to a health facility for assistance?
Thank you for that question. So, some of the STIs, unfortunately, will not present with any symptom. And if they do, the symptoms then will be according to what type of STI you have contracted. So they are different, okay? But the common ones, you find maybe someone will have ulcers in the genitalia, they'll have swellings, they'll have discharges, being male or female, they will experience pain, you know. Yeah, so we should not rely on symptoms, because others do not have symptoms. Will not show.
They will not
signs.
show.
No.
All right, so there's this thing of self-treatment, like taking herbs and everything. Do they actually help?
Okay, so we know that the medicines we use come from, there's that connection with the herbal and so on and so forth. So they can help to cure, but the catch is, one, you don't know what type of STI you have contracted. I've said there are different organisms, so you don't know what type. That is number one. Then number two, the medicine you are going to use, you don't know how much, because like the drugs which we give in health facilities, they have what we call dosage, so that you don't give too much to someone. And some of these drugs are given looking at the weight of someone, the age of someone. So there's a way we calculate to say, okay, this one can take 2 tablets, this one can take 4 tablets. But when it comes to herbals, You don't know how many spoons you can give. You don't know how many cups someone can drink. So self-medication, not really. I wouldn't encourage, because when you take too much, for example, of a certain herbal medicine, it will destroy some of the organs, like the kidneys, for example, and it brings another problem instead of sorting what you wanted to sort primarily.
All right, so we've heard it, like self-medication is not advised because you don't know what you're sick of and you might have an overdose. Now, speaking of self-medication comes as a result of young people not going to the health facilities because there have been issues of, let me say, bad attitudes from health workers. I go there, I'm a young person, let me say, I go test for HIV, then the results come out positive. That interaction between me and the health personnel won't be that good. Maybe I'll be discriminated, maybe I'll be asked, but no man, just how can you get HIV at this age? So I think that's a barrier. What can be done in order to reduce or keep it off?
Okay, I like the way you came out. So the first barrier is self-stigma. When you are in your room, you've seen that you have a problem, then you've started discriminating yourself.
I think the stigma comes about because of the surrounding, the people around me, how they make me feel.
Yeah, so sometimes that stigma, we create it in our heads and then we tend to make it a reality. So self-stigmatization should not be encouraged. Okay, I know sometimes, yes, health workers, I wouldn't say all of them can help you equally. There are those who can have maybe some resistance, I mean some questionable approach. But health workers are trained to treat everyone equally, okay? And when you go to seek medical attention, they will even assure you that whatever we are doing here, it remains here, okay? Whatever we are going to talk about, that's why they even ask you, can you show me, even if it's in the private area, show me. They will see, they will help you, and it ends there. That's how health workers are trained. Okay? So let's not self-stigmatize ourselves. I mean, let's not stigmatize ourselves. Then the other way is the youth-friendly corners which we have in health facilities. Okay? So when you go to a health facility, ideally, the way the youth-friendly corner works is when a young people goes to a health facility, he should be fast-tracked, not standing on a queue, follow the long queue, because those are some of the barriers. And especially if maybe that young people is in a school uniform, we would want to attend to them as quick as possible. So these are some of the things which we do. Yeah.
All right, so you've talked of fast tracking. So the VIPs, when they go to health facilities, like they access services very quickly and very faster.
Yes.
You talked of them, if they say something, it remains in that particular office.
Confidentiality.
Exactly. So now the thing is that I want to, because when we talk of the health system, it's more like a pie. Let's say in Lusaka, I'm able to access services, I'm able to go to a youth-friendly space, but that's not the same case for a person who's actually in a rural area. So how is that? How are you planning to? How is that imbalance, and how does it affect the people there?
Okay, it really does affect people. I wish I was a spokesman for the ministry, but then we have these structures. The way I've explained, to say we should fast track the young people and so on and so forth, is in the structure of the Ministry of Health. This is how we are trying to make sure that every health facility is able to practice, because we've seen that it helps young people.
All right, so I want you to talk on, you talked of delaying sexual debut. What's the importance of delaying sexual debut?
Okay, so to start with, when you start early, your body is not ready for those activities. Yes, it's not ready. You haven't reached that maturity where you can do these activities. And then two, you avoid, for example, sexual transmitted infections. You are going to reduce the risk of acquiring these sexual transmitted infections. And some of them, by the way, you can acquire it, and 10 years plus later, that's when it's going to show, you know.
Yeah.
And at that time when it has shown, you have no signs and symptoms. You see that? It's only going to discover when it has advanced, when there's no comeback. And then you'll find that once you reach that advanced level, maybe the lifespan will be 5 years.
To be reduced.
Yes. You see that? Eh?
Yeah.
So it's very important. Let's put abstinence back in action, rather than the way we look at it at the moment.
All right, so Mr. Kebbi, as we are concluding the interview, what are your last closing remarks to a young person who might be listening in?
Okay, so young people, we were young too. So when we say, can you delay? Can you wait until your time? We know what we are talking about. It's through experience. There's no need for you to rush. So for you to avoid things like sexual transmitted infections, can you delay? Your body is not ready. When you grow up, you'll find these things at the right time. You'll start doing them. And then if at all there's any problem you have, seek medical attention. Go to the health facility. There are people who are going to help you there. Don't just sit home, because if you sat home, you are going to have complications out of whatever you have. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kebbi, for coming through.
So thank you, too.
So that was Mr. Kebbi was explaining on the side effects of STIs, how we can prevent, and please don't self-medicate, and please go to a health facility when you have got symptoms, or just go for a random checkup just to make sure your health is in check. Catch me on the other side with Olivia as we wrap up the show.
Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, this is the Youth Care Talk Show brought to you by Corporate in partnership with CBC. And now, before we went on the break, Albert had a conversation with Mr. Kebbi. That was a beautiful interview, by the way.
Thank you.
I learned a lot, honestly, yes. But my key takeaway was delayed sexual debut. This is something that a lot of people in our generation find hard to do, but delaying sexual debut has a lot of advantages, one of which you are sort of preventing yourself from getting the STI. So for me, that one was a key takeaway. What was your key takeaway, Albert?
On the self-stigma. I've always had the notion that stigma comes around from the people around us, but Mr. Kebbi actually talked about you yourself, self-stigmatizing yourself. Right. So I think we need to do away with that. Then when we do away with that, we'll be accessing services.
Nice. And if you're just joining us and you've missed the interview, be sure to catch it at 11 a.m. on channel 277 DSTV. Or better still, you can follow us on our Facebook page, that's Corporate Zambia and CBC TV Zambia, to catch the recording.
And we've got you covered on GoTV, it's channel 93, Top Star channel 112.
That's all we had for you today. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye.